I'd like to call this meeting to order. Oops.
Sorry, Bob.
Sorry.
Are we really starting?
We're really starting.
Early?
It's 2:00.
Sorry.
Straight up 2:00. Yeah. I'd like to call the regular meeting of Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District to order. And we'll do the roll call first.
Sure. Epstein,
Present.
Schroeder, here. Tucker,
Present.
Minichiranda,
Here.
and Dorwood.
Okay. Good.
Do I have to do roll calls on every vote?
Yeah, we'll have to do roll call votes.
Clarification.
You bet. You got it. Okay. Announcements, Eric?
I'd like to welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled, new on the first Fridays of the month, meeting of Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District, and like to thank all the veterans from D-Day on the 80th anniversary, plus 1 day.
Yes. Okay. Are there any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar? Not hearing any. We'll then move to comments from the audience, the opportunity for members of the community to address the board on any non-agenda items. Are there any hands up online?
There are none.
I don't see any. Nice to see you. Okay. All right. And there are no written comments from the public. in
That
the
is
document.
correct.
All right. So is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
Yeah, Dornbrook so moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder, aye. Tucker,
Aye.
Minichiranda,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay. We are ready for finances.
Right. So we're back to the regular rhythm of things. These have been reviewed by the Finance Committee. So when we're back in the regular order, it should stay that way, barring any rescheduling. So with that, everyone probably read about the budget variances. There was one question that came up during finance, and basically why was operating $1 million low and capital reserves $1 million high. It's because we did a transfer from the non-interest earning revenue account to the interest earning capital reserve account, which we also call operating reserve. So there's a little confusion there, but that was one of the things that did change. And that reflects what we talked about at the board meeting, I think 2 months ago. So with that, if there's any questions.
Any comments from the finance committee?
We went through it pretty thoroughly twice, and there were quite a few changes, but I think it's in good shape now.
Okay. Are there any questions about the?
Could you
finances?
remind, please, the timing of why are we reviewing March 31st? It takes 2 months to talk about March as opposed to April.
Because bills will come in a month later and we have to close and reconcile the accounts. So we have to wait for all the bills to come in. So the bills in March come in at the end of April, and bills in April come in at the end of May.
The packet makes reference to April preliminary.
Yes.
Do we see April preliminary?
April preliminaries, only thing in April preliminaries is revenue. So that's all we have. We don't have any of the expenses for the preliminaries, just the revenue. Because we do get the billing out in time for the meetings usually. So we do have the
And John,
preliminaries.
that's been a topic. I'm sure timing's been a topic at finance committee.
Well, timing was a problem this year because we got out of sync with being able to get the reports to finance in advance of the board meeting. Because we changed the dates, now we should be, like Eric said, we should be back on track. We'll be able to review the packet before and go through and edit.
But we should, there's no reason to expect in future months that we'll be looking at a more recent month than 10 weeks ago close.
I don't think so. Eric,
That won't change.
Really, no, that's where we'll be. Finance will get them first. So the June finance meeting will be the May financials, or the April financials and the May.
June finance is April financials. July
And
board is
board.
April financials.
And in May, April and
And
May.
that's
in
not
this case.
likely to change. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Are there questions on the finances? Okay, not hearing any. Cash, you want to do the cash flow then?
Sure, we'll go to cash flow. So you can see we changed this last month, so we've kept it that format. Hopefully it's a little bit cleaner for everyone to see where all the cash is. We just moved the lines above the total line. So Bob's suggestion. And we are doing well on our cash flow. As expected. December is always our low point, of course.
Any questions on cash flow? Hey, Doug, I just want to do a check and make sure the sound is okay.
Yes, everything is great. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any questions on cash flow? Okay, then we'll move on to the draft operating budget.
Okay, this is predominantly the same as the board saw last time with some changes coming out of finance. Finance has reviewed this as well. Shrink this just so we can see that. So we did talk about the fire department fund and why the big change in 2020 fiscal year ending 2027. The 501c3 will no longer have sufficient funds to pay for the stipends if they continue to choose to do so, but they would run out at the current rate. So any questions on fire?
Yeah, can I just ask a high level question for some of these?
Sure.
So something like fire, where there's a negative projected net summary, that is because it gets supplemented in other ways, is like from tax revenue or things like that. Is that
Exactly correct. It's supplemented by the fire assessment. Well, it's the only thing that's not in here is the property tax. So that's what takes it to it. That employee housing, and there's one other that
Parks and Rec, maybe.
Parks and Rec. Thank you. That get hit with property taxes that take them back to a net zero at the end of each year, but that's reconciled at the end of the year.
Okay. Then I guess, and I think we talked about this maybe at the last meeting, and I apologize if I'm thinking about it, but like I think for some of the other ones that are more of like electric and I think water and some of the maybe wastewater all have negative budgets going into the future. And can you remind me why that seems a little bit more surprising to me, but I do know some of them get property taxes.
Yeah. So just to remind you that, yes, that was because we have to do a rate study. So I had not speculated on the rate studies, but I have since when we get to those items, you will see that they're no longer doing that. I took my best guess based on current status quo, but are we going to continue to use property tax as much as we do in water and wastewater now? That's a question. So it's very speculative at best, but you will see as we go through that those negatives have mostly been eliminated.
And wastewater gets hit with a much larger non-cash depreciation expense.
Right.
Going forward.
On fire, is it true that we don't do interfund allocations to fire?
We have never done an interfund allocation, although we could.
Oh, we can't. We're allowed to.
Yes, government funds and enterprise funds can receive interfund loans. And
Okay.
this is one of our government funds.
Okay. And so I know you just said this 2 minutes ago, but we closed the gap with property tax.
Correct.
That comes in at a later time, which is why it doesn't show up here, or maybe we don't.
We have certain commitments for property tax, and the last ones, the first one to get is electric. And
which is always in the black, though, isn't it?
It's part of our loan covenants that we have with them. So we have to do certain amounts of property tax funding. This year was the lowest, which is great at 150. I think we ended up at, whereas last year we were at 450.
You need to channel 150 or 450 into electric
To meet our
fund in order to meet okay.
Yeah.
RUS loan to ratios.
Okay.
And so last year, I think the order of things went electric, fire, Parks and Rec, employee housing, Parks and Rec, and we short sheeted water and wastewater compared to what we promised to do in our rate studies because we only had so much property tax. So that was that's how the board chose to do it last October, I think, is when we did our allocations.
The only thing I'm confused about is that electric seems always to be in the black.
It is always in the black.
And yet the covenants say, but beyond your net income or your net cash, you need
Yeah.
to also put in,
We're getting a little off track, so I would be happy to send you the
we'll come right
loan
back to
docs.
electric in a minute. I'll wait.
Yeah, but I mean, talking about the USDA loan covenants is not anything to do with operating budget. I'll get you those separately. They're a good read when you get insomnia.
Just a quick summary. The target is 105% of expenses. Revenue covers 105%. So we have to be at least 5% margin.
Thank you.
That's why it's not break even.
If
like
we're
that.
not, then the 450 or the 150 or whatever it is. Okay, thank you.
Force it, yeah.
Okay, let's move on then. Parks and Rec, always
Parks and Rec is
controversial.
Pretty much status quo. Yeah, terribly controversial. Nothing changed there from last time.
Thanks for getting the,
It's nice to get
The
the
equipment
playground
too.
up. early.
Yeah,
That was great.
my wife and daughter are already asking me.
yep, it's been up for a bit.
Yeah.
Last week, I think. Electric, we corrected the error in depreciation amortization. And so that was one of the changes from the last time this was seen. So that has been rectified. And you'll see, Doug, that I just went ahead and did some speculative numbers on that. But that doesn't mean that's how the rates are going to be kept in the future because it does expire during this 5-year time period.
Got it.
Question on base rates. There are $1 million of revenue. How great is the variation? I think it's based on this EDU calculation. How big is the variation
Zero.
in base rates
Zero.
between residents? So a
I'm sorry.
between residents. So a consumer or a ratepayer in the meadows versus a homeowner.
So there's no variation in an EDU. There is a variation in an AMU, and that is based on customers' usage. So each customer
3-year
is
plus usage.
correct,
Yeah.
is the master of their own destiny until they hit the 3-year mark. Then it's locked in.
And the variation might be like I happen to pay 150.
The
plus or
variation
minus.
is high users and low users.
And what might a low user pay for a base? Just roughly $30, $50,
The
$80.
lowest we set it at was 1/2 of AMU, so that is half of the normal base rate. So basically, it's 60. It's 60.
a month, just a minute.
Yes,
$60
$60 and 71.5
Thank
cents
you.
or something.
Okay. Thank you.
And the sky's the limit at the other end.
Correct.
I think it was fire too.
I'm sure this has been covered in the past. The power purchase agreement, 700 something thousand is pretty steady. But this year, this year it popped over 800. Was that the spike that led to the whole hedging discussion? Why did power purchase go to 835?
I believe that wouldn't be the tail end of it, would it? No.
Yeah, the spike
That
was
because we
the-
switched to hedging midway through, which increased cost but gave us stability. So it's a half a year at the higher prices, and then we switched to hedging right
And
around.
the hedging caused us to go 15% over our plan or budget.
We also had to increase rates, which you'll recall you voted for. And so that was, we increased rates to offset the hedge, but it didn't catch up because we did the hedging. So it'll stabilize out. It's stabilized now. It just doesn't reflect this in the.
But in terms of expense or COGS for power, the reason we went on a roughly 15% over plan to 835 is
Because of
spike
volatility
and
in
then
the market in the first half of the year.
okay, not the fact that we paid more for hedging. It's the volatility.
It's
the first.
both,
Okay.
but it would have been, it's more the volatility in the first half. before
Okay.
the
Thank
switch.
you. Mhm.
Propane, this goes to your question as well, Doug. You'll see I just took a sophisticated wild guess at numbers that basically makes the fund balance annually. So when we do the propane master plan and then the propane rate study, obviously the propane rates will reflect all the changes, including the prior month assessment, not the current month assessment, when we get to that. So
What document would one read to understand the renewable energy credits, the REC spending, which I think is about 130 or something? What is it? Where I don't want to take your time to explain it now, but where is this explained? What we do with RECs?
yeah, I mean, Rex is, everyone purchases
All
Rex. Probably
utilities.
Google's probably going to be your best bet on the detailed explanation. Basically, you can buy them in the market. We have to buy a certain percentage. We buy way more than that. We buy 100% of our sales, not our
We
callous.
max out on RECs.
Correct. And so the renewable energy credits, we don't know where they come from, how they're generated. We just know that they are clean energy credits that we use to offset ours. But as to what makes that up, that's probably
It is a board decision. It's at our discretion that we choose to max out.
No, that was part of the last.
No, it's part of the rate study.
yeah, it was a board decision in the rate study.
In the last rate study.
Well,
Okay.
Otherwise, we'd be at 40-something% right now.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
30.
38, 40, yeah.
38, yeah.
I don't remember which year it changes. Yeah.
Yeah. So really nothing spectacular in propane to discuss. Water again. I took my best guess on this as well. There is a negative net summary, but once you take out the depreciation, it balances back out. Again, we have a rate study coming up. I don't know if that will change dramatically or not.
Are you underwater or propane?
We finished. Yeah, I was done with propane.
On propane, sorry to back up. There was going to be, or there is, I guess, a June meeting to plan the rate study. Is that, or the master plan? The rate study is going to be. I don't know. I made notes that, or saw notes from a prior package that in June this month, we
started the master plan,
starting the master plan.
and then the rate study will follow the master plan, and that's across all 4 enterprise funds.
Okay,
It's water, wastewater, electric, propane.
thank you. Any questions on water?
No, I don't see any questions on water. Shall we move on?
Wastewater, you'll see that depreciation amortization goes up substantially. That is the wastewater treatment plant coming online in the fall of 2025. And again, the rates, a wild guess, but there is a rate study coming up this next fiscal year. So it's pretty consistent across the 3 that I just took guesses at: water, wastewater, and propane.
Will those rate studies address connection fees?
No, but we can do connection fees separately. I've already spoken with our rate consultant that we used for water, wastewater last time to see if he was available, since he already has familiarity with our water, wastewater rates.
Right.
And that was a pretty good rate study. And he said he could do our connection fee analysis after the rate study's done. And so once the master plans are done for water and wastewater, we can do the rate study. Rate study's done. He said he would do the connection fees for us as well.
Right.
So
And Eric, I think
we
you
won't
had
get
that
all
slotted in.
4. So sorry, we won't get all 4 at once, but there's nothing to stop us from, when we have the data, to go ahead and update new water and wastewater connections. I mean, Amador Water just updated their water connections, $35,000 for a single family home. So we're quite a bit behind.
Yeah, that's it.
They should connect to us. We're cheaper.
Doug, what was your question,
What are
sir?
we roughly?
Well, I was just say, Eric, you had, I mean, the packet we have near the end, the schedule, and you had that slated after, I think, water, wastewater, and propane rate studies were done, not the electric, right? Because that's in 2025. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. Well, we'll review that when we get to the. Yeah.
Connection fee, since you bring it up, it's 35,000 in Amador. What is it here?
It varies. It changes every July. What's our water connection fee? 7-ish?
Ballpark.
It's listed on the website.
I think
Great,
it's
so-
around, all the connection fees are there, and I think it's 7, or I'm conflating water plus wastewater, but I think that's where it is.
So it's less than $10,000.
I believe so. For not all of them, but individually, I think each of them is less.
Right.
I think each of them is less than 10,000. Employee housing, and I think I explained this last time, but just to reiterate, rental income is going down, and it will be going down for the foreseeable future. One, because we're not charging snow removal housing, so that's a 2-bedroom unit that is no longer generating income, and we had to move with the refurbishment of the new fire quarters, we had to move the on-call quarters into employee housing, and that's another 2-bedroom unit that we're no longer receiving rental income from. Cable, you can see cable's running at a big deficit, and as Standish pointed out, probably our G&A allocation is wrong because we really don't spend that much time on it, but that was part of our scrambling last year in September. when we redid all the G&A allocations that got hit. His point was he requested to see, and I have reached out to Olga to see if we could just combine cable into G&A and keep the $12,000 of revenue and do that. So that's something I've reached out to Olga to discuss.
And this is really just to have access to a local channel.
Volcano is required to provide a local access channel, and we were willing to do that for them because they had nothing to put on there. So we put the board meetings on.
And Erica, is what you described on the G&A allocation, at the last meeting, you talked about how, we're spending more than what we're receiving for this. So do you think that is a fix that will say that we're actually over budgeting the G&A allocation, or is it a true expense that we have to remedy and think about in terms of asking for more money from revenue, or we just stop providing this?
We're over budgeting G&A. We don't spend a lot of time on cable TV, and the $12,000 is sufficient to offset our real costs. We should correct our G&A allocation at some point.
Okay.
Or, as Standish said, roll this into just generic G&A and get rid of this fund altogether, because it sure be nice to not have as many funds as we have.
Right. I guess my number one point on this was I felt like from the last meeting, I left that meeting concerned that we're losing money on providing this service continually. But what I'm hearing you say is that that's not necessarily true. It's that we're over budget, we're overstating our actual expense towards this. Did I understand that correctly?
That's how I would view it. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, solid waste.
Solid waste. And we're actually in a pretty good position on solid waste. Obviously, we're subject to ACEs. Every December, they give us what their adjustment is. But with some changes we've made in solid waste and where labor's kind of been going, I believe that we're going to be able to keep the rates the same for the foreseeable future and not have to do a rate increase.
Okay. So I can't see the participants. Are there any questions from the audience?
No,
On
it
the-
would flag up if there were any.
Okay.
It would flag me if there was any.
Okay.
Okay.
Any comments from finance on the operating budget?
No, I think, we've been through it a few times, and I think it's in good shape to move forward.
Good.
At the risk of digressing, could you just provide a quick recap on the main utilities, where we are with master plan and rate studies?
We have that scheduled for later in the agenda.
This agenda?
On this agenda, yes.
That's sorry.
It's covered in item 10.
I will wait. $70. Let's talk snow.
Okay, so we'll move on to
Snow removal, I think, is the
item
next.
C, snow removal, page 46.
So this is just a recap of what the board directed us to do. So looked at the allocations. So this looked at the allocations with KMA roads and pads only, without KMA. These would be the allocations for the HOAs without KMA. It's based on 5 years of data. And then the allocation with KMA is based on 4 years of data, as last year would be an irrelevant year to combine in there. So those are those percentages. And we go back to the old G&A allocations if we do this. And so finance has looked at this as well. So we talked about this a bit of finance, but the estimated budget uses 75% of actual expenses, and we're projecting 25. There's some outstanding vendor invoices and repair invoices, and I'm not sure what the final 25% is going to look like in reality. And so we've estimated the budget, but we will not know the final numbers until June is actually closed. So that will close in July, and we will have numbers not in the July board meeting, but sometime in July for the August board meeting. So we'll probably have them for finance in the third week of July, and then the board in August.
Okay, so just to reiterate then, that your best estimate is $840,000 of revenue needed next year.
If with KMA, or 730 without.
Okay. So the portion that would be firm would be the percentage allocation. And the missing number is the total.
Correct. The
Revenue
total
needed.
needed revenue is the missing number.
Okay. So maybe this meeting we can see if anyone has any questions on the percentage allocation for either case.
In finance, we had some discussion about KMA driveways versus roads.
Mhm.
Can you just recap some of what we talked about?
Yeah, I
there?
mean, yeah, so we took out, if you look at all the data here, we calculated with KMA, we went back 4 years and subtracted the driveways out, and then we calculated the percentage of each of the respective HOAs in terms of total district time spent, total district revenue needs, because time spent and revenue are equated. That's what we use is our GPS data. And so you can see that the changes, with and without their driveways, you can see the changes in
I'm sorry to
KMA.
stop you. When you say time spent and revenue, do you mean time spent and
G-
expense?
GPS measured time for snow.
Yeah, GPS
removal.
measures time on each piece of
Is
snow.
how we
And that,
allocate
and that
that.
defines expense.
That's how we allocate.
That's how we allocate contract cost. So if I spend 100% of the time in your driveway, you would get 100% of the total district's cost. Spread that out across the valley.
And yet the HOA, like East Meadows pays, I'm sorry to forget this, they contract in advance of the year for paying X 100,000, whatever it is,
Yeah, usually
irrespective of time spent, and then you true up.
not irrespective of time spent.
Oh,
No, the percentages that we set the contracts at are based on time spent in the prior
previous year,
4 in this case, or 5 in the other case years.
previous years.
Yes,
Okay.
it's the average of those 5 or 4 years.
Okay, so time spent GPS determines expense over 3, 4, 5 years, and that determines what you charge the HOA, ergo revenue.
GPS determines time spent, not expense. Our budgeting determines our
Oh,
anticipated
I see.
expenses.
Yes, okay. So it's just that relatively variable
Once I
expense.
figure out how much it's going to cost, in this case, 730 or 840, I proportionally allocate based on the percentage for each HOA on their historic
I see.
use.
Okay.
But we don't, but as of right now, Eric, we have never historically gone back and trued up. So if, with the rounding, which I would imagine is typically rounding at this point of, we budgeted 2.1% of the time, we used 2.2% of the time. We don't go back and true up that 0.1% difference of what we actually contracted with versus what.
No, but it goes into the next year's
Yeah,
average.
exactly.
Right, but it goes in, but that's what I'm saying. It's like
It catches
it
up. Yeah.
catches up in the long-term moving average type of approach. I'm just trying to answer Chris's question of,
And we don't see real wild swings unless, and there are notes in here that
Right.
refer to them, so I'm sure everybody read them. But unless there is a change in the area of removal that can
That's right.
override the 5-year average or multi-year average.
Mhm.
That will override the multi-year average. You can see it in the policy percent column.
Okay. So we have a P&L or budget without KMA and with KMA. The revenue numbers, the amount we'd need to charge, obviously bigger with KMA. That's the 800 something versus 700. How does this tie back into the point you made a minute ago about driveways as a percentage of total time? Does that,
Because most of the percentages are pretty straightforward because we're just taking a 5-year average. With KMA, we had to parse out driveways versus roads.
because we would not be doing
Because
driveways.
they didn't ask for a quote for driveways. And so there was some discussion about that. As it ends up, it seems like we spend more minutes in the roads than we do in the driveways. And it's probably because they're cleared basically kind of perpetually, where
And they're a lot bigger.
And
So-
some driveways are blown into the roads, which means a second clear as well
Yeah.
in certain areas.
Yeah.
The square footage of the roads is a lot more than the
square
drive.
footage is more, it's probably cleared more frequently.
Yeah.
Things like that. So it all met, it was all generated using the GPS data, so it should be accurate, but just intuitively, we were like, well,
It was
how much is
surprising.
driveways, how much is roads, and it makes sense.
Right. So I guess just to summarize, you did the right things of trying to get it to apples for look back of years of GPS data. That's what we should be like as someone who was not in a conversation on finance, of course, that's what I want to make sure that we're doing, right? That we're being apples to apples and we're doing the best we can and coming up with our allocations, right? Like that's
The
what
data we have, these are apples to apples comparisons, yes.
Yep.
Perfect. So then we're just waiting for the budget numbers to come through so that or the expenses to come through so we can allocate the budget and know what the actual dollars, multiply the percentages in the contract percent column times X to get the actual contract proposal to that we can send to KMA, from which they can make a decision. And then we can go from there, essentially what it would come down to.
So to say the quiet part out loud with KMA, because they're not taking driveways, they're saving less than one might think, because it's, I don't know, 80% of the majority of time spent in any of these neighborhoods is roads, not driveways, more so than I would have thought. To me, it was counterintuitive, but they don't save. It's not as if they save half their cost by foregoing driveways. They
No.
save
No,
a
they,
much smaller fraction.
they don't have that many driveways.
Also true. But even if East Meadows were to do this,
Yeah, not all of them contracted.
Well, and
I mean, we've had plenty of experience to work through this. So I think it's as good as we can come up with.
Oh,
And
it's
it's all
actually
been
pretty
looked
good.
at. Yeah, I think it's pretty good.
so where does
Yeah,
it lead
Peter,
you in
what
terms
did
of
you
a
wanna
I was
add?
gonna say,
Yeah.
Chris, that when we say roads, it's roads and parking paths.
paths? Yeah, I
And
understand.
there are a lot of those.
Yeah. So it
Okay,
leads to a.
so are you asking for approval of the percentages?
Ellen has her hand up.
Okay.
If you're ready for public.
That'd be great.
Hello, this is Ellen Abloh, and I'm actually representing KMA. I'm one of their newest board members, so I don't have much history on last year, but I do have questions from us for this year. And based on the discussion, my understanding is you are not including driveways because KMA did not ask for driveways?
We're not including driveways because that was the decision of the board.
And then why have you decided not to include driveways?
Because it requires significant investment in new equipment that we would not need otherwise.
Okay, but you're doing driveways on the East Meadow side.
We have sufficient tracklesses to cover our existing customers, yes. We would need a new trackless to cover KMA. And that's about $250,000.
Okay, but it's my understanding, and I wasn't involved last year, is that you invested in equipment to cover everybody last year. So I'm assuming was equipment not acquired as
The board had to change the entirety of our 5-year capital budget as a result of KMA's last minute departure. And so we pushed off snow removal, we pushed off equipment repairs to try and lower costs for the rest of our customers.
Mm-hmm.
And the new equipment that was purchased was for roads, and it made a very big difference.
Right, no, okay. Roads were great. Quick, so what it would entail in order to include driveways?
We could not provide that service this year. Unless KMA wanted to purchase the equipment, we don't have the budget for that.
And can the equipment be leased?
Possibly.
Okay, so it could be, we could discuss this further and whether it would handle driveways or not handle driveways.
Unless the board wants to reconsider that they've already made the decision, so no.
We're
Okay.
under the impression from Larry that there are enough other ways of doing driveways, that was not critical. And based on that and and our inability to do the job we would like to do on all driveways without a significant investment, we voted and to do the roads and parking pads, which we know we can do an excellent job at.
And I
Mhm.
also understand you're negotiating with Vail for snow removal as well at the same time.
That's not my understanding. We could be, but it hasn't come across the board, let's put it that way. Well, I've been on it in the last month. So,
I see Ricky's on the call. Maybe he could shed some light.
Does he know?
He's the general manager of Kirkwood. Yes, I hope he
Yes.
knows.
Yeah, well, no, that's why I'm asking. Do you know?
Hello.
Hi,
Ricky, hey.
Hey, I can't hear great. Can you ask the question again, please?
Oh, we have just heard through the Kirkwood ever boisterous grapevine that KMA and Vale have been negotiating plowing in exchange for parking.
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Well, there it goes, wrong again.
okay. Thank you for correcting
Thanks,
it. We
Ricky.
appreciate that.
The rumor mill.
Okay. So that's probably why I haven't heard.
Because it doesn't exist, yes.
Exactly.
Always a good reason.
Okay. So what would be the right path to move forward if we wanted to keep driveways or return driveways to the discussion?
I don't believe we have a path forward this year. We would have to change the capital plan in future years, but we simply don't have the capital to purchase a track list in this upcoming fiscal year without substantive cost to our other customers.
Could we negotiate that with KMA, like a lease or a purchase of an additional piece of equipment if they gave us some kind of a commitment?
I don't know how much time you want to spend going down rabbit holes, given what happened last year.
Yeah,
Wasting staff time.
Ellen, I'd suggest for the purpose of this meeting, we don't really have any data to discuss how.
Oh,
we
I
would alter-
didn't mean discussing it now. I just meant, is there a path forward beyond this meeting that we could discuss this? I realize that off the spontaneous right now is not appropriate and you guys don't have the information, what have you, but could we create a forum for discussing that and seeing if it is possible and what it would take?
Well, I think it'd be fine to have a conversation, just to understand each other and where we are, and that would be appropriate. So
Okay,
why don't we
'cause
try to schedule that?
the board's very different than, I mean, I think there's maybe two people left from a year ago.
Who's currently on the board?
Well, Larry and Kasi is still on the board, and then Greg and I are new.
Okay,
Greg Eden and myself.
okay.
Are you short one member still then?
Then you got
No,
five.
Bruce.
Oh, and
Bruce
then,
remember.
sorry, we also have, I
Bruce?
can't remember. No, not Chris.
Silverberg.
Bruce
Um,
Olberg?
Yeah, Chris Olberg, exactly.
Bruce.
Bruce Oldberg, is that his name?
No, it's Bruce Oldenburg.
Oldenburg.
No, it's
Yeah,
Oldenburg is right. Bruce is the right name. Bruce Oldenburg.
Middle Dangberg.
Kurt Schwann's family is off the board, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, we will,
Okay.
we'll arrange a way to follow up to make sure we just both understand where each other is coming from.
Okay, so Larry's our president now. I'm technically the vice president.
Uh-huh.
Who should we reach out to?
Larry and Rick regularly communicate on snow removal, so I'll
Yeah.
have Rick give Larry a call.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
thank you very much.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there I don't see any other hands raised. Do you want approval of the percentages at this meeting?
Yes, that would be
Okay,
helpful.
I move we approve the percentages.
okay, for both
Second.
cases.
It's Chris Tucker.
I'll second.
Okay,
Doug Notaranda seconds.
yes,
Okay.
okay,
Epstein.
aye,
Schroeder. Aye. Tucker.
I,
Notaranda.
Aye.
Member aye.
okay, so the only remaining step is to finalize the expenses
Correct.
and then apply that to come up with the revenue target. And it might be similar to the numbers in here, it could change.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Yes, I mean, this is,
So
and the
now we should-
reason
yeah.
is the board has previously made it quite clear, no more interfund loans. You know, we're not going to keep kicking the can down the road, so that's why I really need the real numbers to set the next revenue so that there is no need for an interfund loan.
Right.
Bob, could you recap that? There, no need for interfund loans to snow removal?
In prior years, if the actual costs exceeded the revenue, we borrowed money and then put the debt in future years. And we decided as a board to no longer do that. We would just collect the money up front in the next fiscal year.
Collect the money up. So after a
It's
big
just-
heavy year like 18 months ago, I presume we ran over, but so how would we?
We just add the overage into the next year's
Oh,
revenue
okay.
target and collect it. And basically, we paid for it in one year and we're collecting the overage in the
But
subsequent year.
overage is not true up. Overage comes because last year, let's say, was so heavy that it skewed the 3, 4, 5 year average.
Mhm.
And so you, Mr. HOA, are now going to owe considerably more. Or is it
Yeah.
the one-off? Is overage just a one-off?
It's for
prior
that
year.
year. It's for the prior year.
So that is
Yeah.
a true up. I'm a bit confused.
That's fine if you want it. Yeah.
It's different. It's a different true up than what you were asking before. So it's
Yeah, the true up would involve.
it's-
I mean, a
it's
true
diff-
up
but
would-
it's different than what you were saying before. It's different than the question you were asking before. But I don't think we should spend the time going into this right now. But I think it's a slightly different thing.
Well, as we're about to negotiate with our biggest customer, they're almost double East Meadows. It would be useful to
No,
understand
it's not that
That's
big.
not true.
No,
It's
Look
the
at-
biggest customer.
40% to 28%.
Yeah,
it's 31 to
Those are the two
28.
big players,
It's not.
East Meadows and KM.
KMA is 31%, East Meadows
40 to
is 28.
28 if it is what it says on this chart. So it's not double, forgive me.
No, it's 31.2 to
Then-
28.
Okay, then I misread it. It's our biggest customer. We do, but our contracts, and we're proposing a 1-year contract, not a multiple year contract with KMA. Our contract would not have any number in there like X hours, X expense, 800 inches of snowfall. There is no term in the contract, please correct me if I'm wrong, that says this is what you're paying for, and above that, there will be an overage or a true up or anything. What am I wrong about that?
Well, historically, we've
Right.
done-
On
Yeah,
what contractual basis do we go to an HOA?
Because we offer the contract the next year, which includes that amount. And they can sign it or not sign it.
Really?
Yes.
So the overage is just, I assume the overage then says, we spent X hours more in man hours, never mind oil and fuel and other expenses, based on GPS.
No, it's,
The EBS includes fuel and, I mean, it's.
Okay.
It's a unit to measure, to allocate cost.
Well, then,
So it's not man hours.
then I'm
it's the-
mistaken on that, but I still don't understand. How do we go to an HOA in June and say, your year it was in excess, it was an overage, and we're going to charge you X amount? On what basis? Is it in the contract?
It's in the price set in the subsequent year, which is in the subsequent year's contract. So if we were 50,000 in debt, I would add 50,000 to next year's total revenue need. It would cover the prior year's 50,000 plus the anticipated cost for the upcoming year. That's written into each year's contract.
So and you'd split the 50,000 total Kirkwood, and you'd split that based on the allocations.
Correct.
Okay, you're getting 28% of our 50,000 overage, let's say.
Right.
Okay. And if you don't like that, then we won't be giving you service next year.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. But I mean, this goes back to the point I made. I was going to bring it up later, but like the second half of the vote that we had on this, whatever, 3 or 4 meetings ago that I addended to this motion was that we also look into hedging our long-term risk because we offer annual contracts, and what everything Eric just said is that we are exposed to risk, right? So if a customer then says, you know what, there was an overage last year, good for them. I don't want to join and pay for it. Then we're stuck with that. That happened last year in a slightly different scenario where we have expenses and a customer chose not to renew, but we budgeted as if everyone renews. So there are parts of this where we're exposed to risk, and that is part of one of the things that I was trying to make sure that we're not exposing at least the contract side of this. If we have some expenses, if we want to change, also put in some of the risk exposed with overages and true ups like that, we could as well. This is a part of that conversation.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve the percentages. And we voted on that, so we've covered everything on snow removal.
I mean,
At a subsequent meeting, if you want to discuss the cost, we'll have a final amount that we need to charge for revenue.
so the contracts don't go out till August. Our contracts won't go out until August.
To all HOAs in August.
Personally, I think if we can get some kind of a long-term commitment from KMA, that we should factor in doing their driveways. That's me. I don't have a driveway. I just think to be equitable, I mean,
Yeah.
what they did really sent us for a loop at the last minute, and I don't think it worked out well for anybody.
In what committee, or is it at the board meeting where one discusses how our contracts, what our contracts are with the HOAs? And discusses questions like what I'm raising, like how we deal with overages, or how we align the fact that we're doing 1-year operating contracts against 5-year CapEx plans and run into problems like the one that we just discussed, where, hey, we were going to buy equipment and then KMA exited and we didn't buy the equipment, and could we lease it or buy it? I mean, all of that. I mean,
Right.
this is a mismatch. And in what committee do we discuss that? Is it ops, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I guess it would be.
I mean,
Or finance.
Or
it
five
may,
or both.
may behoove everyone to remember the role of the board and the role of staff, because you're not here to dive down into that micromanagement level. That's not what a board member does. General questions, absolutely, but we're not going to go be refining, how we purchase our oil and things like that at ops or any other committee for that matter.
Right.
No, but how
I'm
we
not
avoid
suggesting that.
the very significant 6-figure problem that we ran into last year with losing our biggest snow removal customer.
That is what Doug was speaking to. One of the things he requested in his motion just a couple months ago, not that long ago, was that we asked Josh, our district council, to come up with a clause in there that if anyone doesn't renew, then the full interfund loan becomes immediately payable and due by that HOA, and district council is working on that.
Oh, okay, so that will be on
That
a
would-
future agenda here.
That's right.
The result of Josh's finding.
It would
And
just
I-
be incorporated. It would just be incorporated into the following year's contract. The vote was taken, the direction was given to staff. We will incorporate that as per the direct board vote.
Okay,
That's what I was trying to say, Chris, is I think we have this covered given the motion I made. So I think that's included in here, but what you're mentioning is a pivot on what I brought up in motion. It's the same idea though. And so I think we are covered, given that we've already given staff instruction to make sure we are covering our long-term risks, given that we currently offer annual contracts.
thank you.
Okay, so let's move on then to the next item. Item D, annual investment policy review.
Every year for policy 380, we're supposed to look at how we invest the district's money. And so I alluded to this earlier, but currently we have some invested with LAIF. The board previously agreed with staff that we should move it over to 5-star, which was meeting or beating LAIF's interest rate, and it's paid monthly, not quarterly. And so staff and finance committee both recommend that we move all of our interest generating funds to 5-star. And I would note that to date, we've already generated, I think, almost $40,000 just by switching to 5-star and switching. And that goes back to the discussion on the finance as well. Why did that operations look weird? Well, we started making some money for the district. So basically, and we can leave the LAIF open even with a zero balance. So
Yeah.
we recommend that we switch.
And the other item that came up was that 5-star is federally guaranteed for the,
125%.
so it doesn't increase risk.
The finance committee is confident in 5-star. Their
Yeah, that was
ability to.
the thing that came up was, is it federally guaranteed? And it is. That's our full amount, or 125% of our full amount is federally guaranteed.
So you don't see that we're taking any new risks, really.
No, that kind of mitigates the risk, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's better than FDIC that says a limitation, right?
I mean, it's great to get that extra interest.
And the idea is we'll just keep arbitraging between our options over time, right? I mean, that's like
Absolutely.
if Leif now becomes better than 5-star, we'll just switch back and we'll be able to arbitrage the best return over time.
Exactly right.
Or crypto.
No.
We strike that from the notes of this meet. I don't want to. I don't even want to have that mentioned. Come on.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Schroeder motioned, and it was Doug.
Yep.
Second.
Doug second.
Roll
Okay.
call, please.
Epstein,
Yes.
Schroeder. Aye. Tucker.
Aye.
Minutaronda.
Aye.
Nordberg, aye. Unanimous.
Okay, next topic is performance reporting.
That came out in the addenda.
What?
That came out in the addenda, and I think somebody opened the old packet, and Brandy's not here. But what I will say is that May is historically our highest. 80% for I&I is not out of the range. It's been somewhere between 75 and 92 historically. And then electric is high because we have not been able to access the backside meters yet and get those manual reads, which we will do as soon as we can get back there. It's easier when our guys can ski to them instead of having to trudge through snow and take the lifts to them.
Okay, are there any questions on the performance report?
No. Seems pretty consistent with past years.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 9F, the general manager contract amendment. So we put a summary in the staff report in the packet just so everyone could see. So we created a negotiating team. I think there's a formal name for it, but I forgot. Labor relations.
Labor relations.
I like that.
Okay. And so that was myself and John. The board in closed session in February meeting confirmed our desire to extend the contract with the general manager. We worked with Eric, and part of that was doing a market analysis of what's the market rate currently for that position in our location. We got a fair amount of data on our own, but then at the end, we also found out that CPS Consulting, who specializes in this, was available to, and they did this on their own time at no cost to us. They did an analysis, so they pulled about 20 different contracts of relevant comparisons in Northern California, and that determined that a salary range, if we were going to list this, a competitive salary was between 175 and 225 based on experience level. So based on that, the board posed a contract amendment that's described on the next page, and we were very happy and excited that Eric agreed to do that. So we would extend the contract for 3 years to go to July 1st or June 30th of 2027 with the changes identified in the amendment. So are there any, since we all participated in the process?
Yeah.
So I'm very, very pleased that Eric's going to be available to move us forward in this area. And is there a motion to approve the contract amendment?
I move to approve the contract.
Okay.
I'll second.
Tucker,
I'll second.
Tucker and Doug.
Okay.
Seconds.
Okay. Roll call.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Minutaronda.
Aye.
Nordberg, aye.
Okay, Eric. Congratulations. Thank you.
Yeah.
I haven't signed yet.
We?
No, we
Send it
can't
back
until
to
we
the
have
drawing
board
board.
approval.
Yeah.
Assuming the meeting ends on time, we can have a little signing ceremony in a few minutes. Okay, the next item is the general manager's goals. I did not receive any other items since the last board meeting, so unless someone has something new to add now, I'd suggest that we convert these from draft to final.
Good. Do you need a motion?
We do.
Motion to approve the GM goals.
Okay, I'll second that.
Schroeder moved and Epstein seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Tucker, aye. Mediteranda,
Aye.
Robert Guy.
Okay, so we'll now move on to the major projects update, which we've indirectly talked about on this. So I think now would be a good time to make sure we go through all the line items.
Yes, there's some errors down on the board, future activities, which have since been corrected. It's just a cut and paste to add a new year as we're coming to a close on this one. So did that, those have been corrected, but all the new capital plans and the timing of those plans based on revenue needed to construct those various projects has led to quite a shift in where things are landing in terms of estimated timing. So you'll see that reflected here. This matches the capital plan as we last saw it. There's been some minor changes to the capital plan that don't affect this, but that will be going back to ops next month or next week. Right, Peter?
Yeah.
So that's going.
Wednesday.
But this just kind of groups them by water and wastewater. So we did have a first kickoff meeting with the master plan for propane, and we are nearing the end with electric with Cross Canyon, hopefully doing our last changes correctly this time. So we should have 2 master plans done shortly.
And the master plan for water is
the master plan
underway
for water, the kickoff meeting is next week.
next week. Okay. But
So
still,
we do have,
but still Q2.
we have a consultant under contract already, but we just have not had a kickoff meeting yet. Yes, and it's still to Q2.
Okay. So that covers the master plans. After that, we have a series of rate studies
Correct.
that will follow. And we identified a possible candidate to do the electric rate study. And
Possibly 3, I think we met while we
Okay.
were there.
so you followed, Eric and I attended a meeting at SMUD of all of the
Municipal
municipal
rate.
utilities.
And so we came across 3 different potential consultants that could do it. And I did in a meeting with a third-party accounting firm that we've been looking at relative to audit assistance. They were also believe they might be able to provide some service to that end too. So
Will the master plan for electric, will that include EV charging locations?
yes, yeah. Basically, it was just the maps were wrong and those need to be corrected.
Okay.
That was the biggest component. And so that is being done, but we still keep finding mistakes. So we have to keep going back, and they're not the most timely, but unfortunately they're the only ones that know our system. And so we're kind of at their mercy in terms of getting it done.
Okay.
But
Eric, just with regards to that, I mean, I feel like this is a project that has gone on for quite a while. And, you know, when we first saw the draft of this, I think it was last summer, maybe even earlier, like this time last year. That's when we saw the maps that were incorrect and all these sorts of things. How are you feeling about the general outcomes and the quality of work that's coming out of this, given that it's dragged? And
I think
we've
the
continued to find-
quality of work is fine. The responsiveness is sorely lacking. Unfortunately, we don't really have a choice. Our system is such a one-off that I don't know that we could go pick up a new electrical engineering firm that could come in and do this. The land for the cost that we had budgeted.
My impression is they're highly confident and highly unavailable.
That's the problem with hiring the best, that everybody wants them. We're the small
Yeah.
fish. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we could start looking for other ones. I think it's going to be to the detriment of the district, and I think we're just going to have to suffer with it.
Okay, so are there questions now about the timing or the components of all the major projects? That would be a good time to make sure we cover those.
Without going into too much detail, what determines the timing of, say, master plan water, which is now wastewater, which is in a couple of quarters, maybe we're building or investing in our plant. And same question, I suppose, for the rate studies. What determines timing?
Well, the rate studies expire, so that
They
determines
expire.
timing.
Okay.
And the adoption of the capital plan by the board determines timing of the projects.
Okay, so rate studies expire. Our rate study on let's say water, wastewater, I suppose expires first.
Correct.
There are 4 green boxes, so it takes a full year to go to the rate study process takes a full year for water. I guess it takes a full year for just about for electric also. Goes faster for gas. You can't start a rate study process before you've done a master plan. Is that true?
You can, but then you're having to do a quasi master plan each time for each fund. And it's not as good as having a master plan.
Good practice is to do a master plan in advance of that, the first green box for a rate
Correct.
study.
Yep.
Why do some rate studies take a year and some take 6 months or less?
Propane takes less because it is a much simpler, because especially since there's no expansion of capacity, so there's nothing to really look at. It's only repairs of existing infrastructure.
I see.
And it's not subject to the 218 process, which makes it go faster.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the major projects? Okay, then we're ready for the general manager's report.
Well, I've mostly been working on budget. So that's been the bulk of it. Did have a nice vacation in there. So you notice the accounts are a little bit lower than normal. But in all seriousness, I did accept an invitation to speak at the next CSDA conference on the LAFCO process. So I will be venturing down to lovely Indian Wells in September to speak on that. I wish it was not in the middle of summer, but I will be there. So
that way you won't freeze.
I will not freeze. The other thing to report on, it's actually interesting. John Ryder over at KPS reached out and was looking for if anyone knows of any idea of how he can get some state, federal, local assistance with Crooked Meadows Drive. And he has a meeting that I will be attending, and I think Dan Deemer will be attending as well with Supervisor Brown next week at 11 on the 13th. So we'll see if there's any hope for Crooked Meadows Drive, or if it will continue to look like Beirut after the bombing.
At least the Alpine portion.
And I've reached out to him too, but we haven't set up a meeting.
Okay, great. Good. So I will be following up with that.
So he's going to meet with
KPS.
KPS. Yeah, so Reader at KPS is going to meet with Alpine County, is that, or
Amador County.
Well, he
Amador
reached out
County.
to both of
Yeah,
us.
he did. He reached out to
Right.
both. But he'll be meeting with, to start with, the Amador supervisor for this district. And I think he's doing it not, I say KPS, and that's just simply because that's what his signature is.
Right.
And I looked at it on my phone here as we're talking. He's representing KCA, who's in charge of the road, nothing to do with the district, but we're there to lend support.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, it's an important topic. It's near to my heart, but it's not related directly to
Correct.
PUD.
But if there's something we can do to offer assistance, why wouldn't?
Why do you think he? Oh, I'll forget.
Because they don't have enough money to fix the road.
Oh, I know that. I'm just wondering what hope does he have? I wish it were great, but
I don't know. There's CDBG money. Could that be used? Maybe, probably not.
Well, that's usually for low income areas.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's all sorts of things. The county gets money and they have to spend it in certain ways, but I don't know that a private road is any of those things. But I think that's what the discussion is for, is to find out, is there any avenue?
God bless him for trying.
That's all I had.
Okay. Operations report, Rick?
Well, it's been a busy month since you last saw me sitting here. But I am pleased to announce the green waste container has arrived, or actually arrived midweek. And so it's placed next to our vehicle maintenance shop between the treatment plant, which is being improved, and a lot of construction. So if you're looking for it, it's again between our vehicle maintenance shop and the treatment plant. There's a lot of signs around it, again, as last year and the year before. Please don't put construction material in the debris box. It's just green waste only. And we are very appreciative of the Amarillo Fire Council for supplying the funds to have the box for this year. So moving on to membranes, as you know, and heard last month, we did receive the 4 Coke PSH 440 membrane modules, and they were installed. The previous models have been in service for over 10 years. And there was a hiccup with this project, as you may recall, the mounting traverses, the assembly that goes on top of the membranes was sized incorrectly. Therefore, there was a delay. During that delay, Coke changed corporation, their company name, to Covalis Separation Systems. But ultimately, the membranes were stored for the winter and then just installed this past week at the treatment plant and are online. There was one hiccup putting in terrain number 1, where the Covalis representative accidentally put the membrane in backwards, and so when they tried to put it online and test it, it blew off the hoses. They scratched their head and said, "What happened?" But they realized that the module was in reverse, and so they replaced it, started back up, everything was fine. However, for warranty purposes, we wanted to memorialize that there was an error. So if there's something that happens down the road, that we can go back to Covalis and say, "Hey, this might have been because of the failed install in the first attempts." But thanks to staff who spent a lot of extra time and actually doing the work with the representative from Covalis, and we'll see how they go. They're working great. We also had a CPC inspection on an electrical system, which lasted 4 days. I have not received the inspection punch list, but overall, generally, I was told that it went well. They asked a lot of questions about our transformers. They looked at transformer bases, the out valley line, and overall, generally, with a relatively new electrical system on the out valley side, things look really good. On the in valley side, we have an aging system, so transformers slip off or the pads start to creep left and right. There's some ant nests here and there that we had to resolve. Some stickers and signage that weren't on transformers saying what it was or what the number was, or it was fading, but relatively minor punch list. We also had our hazardous material inspection done by Jerry Syke with Alpine County, who inspected all our hazardous waste material, how we store, how we sign, how we dispose or manifest. And it generated a small punch list, but there were no major errors, red flags. And Jerry was very good about working with us. He had been for the last 5 years, as long as I've been working with him, to make sure that our SIRS, our state reporting system, is done correctly and the amounts and the volumes are done correctly. And so really was a good inspection. Moving on to Summer Festival, we just got announced, or we just started getting the marketing information from Jennifer Herbert and the Summer Festival Committee, which, as you know, the district is no longer sponsoring and hosting that committee. It's done through the community. And so we grabbed what we did from Facebook, and you saw a community notice go out yesterday reflecting that the event's coming on July 6th. What was missing in that notice was the actual website link that you could click on easily to see purchase tickets. It was just a QR code. We did get that URL link today, and so in the next community notice that we send out, we'll have that URL link in there so you can sign up if you like.
I assume you'll put a link to it on the webpage, our webpage too.
Yeah, and we'll create a webpage link showing the event, all the activities and so forth.
Yeah.
And so if it hasn't already happened, it's going to happen quickly.
Okay.
A little bit different this year. There'll be actually 2 bands, and then they're offering yoga, a hike, and a few other things. And so far, the silent auction has 2 items in it, but they assure me there's more items for the silent auction. So they're building and expanding as we go along. And Jennifer and her teams have been actually doing a really good job behind the scenes, and we're trying to assist them as much as possible to have a successful event. We've already talked about the playground got installed this last month, which was great. And then I guess the final important thing, there's 2 more things. We have a generator run planned for this next week, starting Monday through Friday. This is a scheduled outage by PG&E notified us that they're going to be doing maintenance on their lines, which we are connected to. further south below Cam Drain. And so they're going to put us offline with the main system from the grid. And so we'll be on generators. You'll hear the generators running, probably just one generator running at this time of year, Monday through Friday. And then in the last two other generator runs we've done, it's been seamless. Customer never knew that we came online and went offline. And so we expect that'll happen with this run as well. But we'll send out a community notice, I think Sunday or Monday morning just to let the customers know.
Would you repeat the timing of that?
It's going to be Monday from 7 a.m., 6:10 until Friday, probably Friday afternoon.
Monday through Friday. Okay, thanks.
And then finally, unless there's any questions about other operations, I'll talk about fire. For May, we got through May on the staffing on call coverage. However, there were 5 shifts that were not taken. And so I covered those remotely. And then starting, that was including last weekend. So literally last weekend, I was responding from Gardnerville, Nevada. This weekend, I'm not able to do that. And this weekend and next weekend, I have absolutely no volunteers available for fire department calls. So if there's emergency in Kirkwood, you're going to have to wait for mutual aid or outside resources to respond. And I've done everything I can to encourage, beg volunteers to do it, but people have lives, they're not paid. And May is the time that a lot of year-round employees take vacation. So we'll just hopefully get through this. So far, year to date, we're up to 48 calls. Last year, we were at 68. The year before, we were at 37. So typically, this time of year, things are kind of quiet. But now that the campgrounds are starting to open up, it's getting warmer, especially with warm weather. People are going to be coming to the mountains. We'll probably get some calls this weekend and moving forward. So I'll let you know how that works out.
If anything comes to mind, do you any of the calls particularly severe, colorful, and only those coming from Kirkwood residents? So were there some important calls that came in that 48?
Can't recall every single call from the beginning of the year, but in the maybe recently. Typically, it's medicals are probably the majority of those. So it's a vehicle accident with a medical injury. There was one fatality or 2 fatalities,
but not here in Kirkwood from a homeowner or resident, ratepayer, customer.
No fatalities from a Kirkwood homeowner ratepayer. No, sir. So,
well, I mean, just to be clear, we don't know if they are necessarily ratepayers or homeowners when it's out on the road. That could be, but I think what you're asking is if it's a home in the valley that had someone had an in the valley while they're in the home. Is that to clarify?
I'm just asking for some color behind the numbers, if we have any, just to know. Obviously, many calls seem to us relatively low importance. Others are urgent. Some are in valley, some are out on the highway or 5 miles away. And so some are skiers, visitors, some are homeowners, residents, customers. So I'm most interested personally in the ones that are in valley customers, home or apartment owners, and wondering if there have been important fire calls or medical situations, the kind of things that we most worry about.
If you want to give me a call next week, I can go through the details of kind of what they are and where they are.
Thanks.
But that concludes.
So on fire, we're currently waiting for the lawyer's analysis of how we can.
We got it today,
Okay.
yesterday. And Rick and I are reviewing it and asking for some additional information, clarifications.
Okay. So we can expect the next month's meeting that you'll be able to give us advice on how to proceed.
That's my hope.
I just want to emphasize, a year ago, we were trying to solve this. We didn't. The problem is every bit as bad as it has been currently.
Right.
Okay.
That
Thanks.
concludes my report unless there's any questions. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. And Rick gave a tour of the wastewater treatment plant. I mean, it's a different place. than a year ago.
A lot of good improvements going on right now.
Yeah, and some big ones next week coming up. So that's good. All right, standing committee reports. Start with finance.
We covered everything for finance in the packet here. You know, budgets, normal budget, the investment policy. So we already went through everything.
Okay, and communications, anything you want to add in addition to what you?
Nope, our committee has submitted a report and our roadmap for future work, and I refer everyone to what's in the packet.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Operations?
I don't really have anything to add. We're gonna meet next Wednesday.
Okay. Personnel did not meet between the last meeting and now, and planning.
We met. Our one topic on agenda is fuel switching for large customers. Last meeting, Eric summarized the response from the 10 or 12 large customers. Generally, they were quite responsive. We're talking about Vail in 2 or 3, 4 different instances, and then large condo buildings. They were cooperative and responsive. It's not yet clear which 1, 2, 3 possible projects or sites might lend itself to PUD assistance from the PBC funds, which would come in the form of, perhaps helping to fund studies, feasibility studies, that kind of thing. The most interesting prospect, it seemed from our last meeting, came from Peter, which is the Timber Creek development, because it is it fair to call that de novo? It's new. Or it'd be a rebuild from the tent to a permanent sort of.
Yeah, that's the plans that I've seen, and I think I've got a copy of them at home.
Yeah,
and it's supposed to occur in 2025. That was the
Really?
Replace the
They
tent
replaced the tents.
with an actual building.
Really?
And there was an artist concept of that. I can see if I can dig that up for you.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
our next meeting is the 19th. So.
Okay. Great. All right. Temporary advisory committees. The only one we have is LAFCO, which did not meet. Okay. All right. So we're now on to general board discussion. Opportunities for board to ask questions or request possible future agenda.
Yeah, Eric, I just wanted a quick clarification because we had this snow removal conversation. I just wanted to make sure, and you said it, but it was in the mix of everything else. Where are we on the concepts of the multi-year risk ability to make sure that we have that contracted appropriately to de-risk ourselves, whether it is a customer on the catch up or if it's on the, equipment costs and their fund loans and things.
So I've had district council focus on the KVFD funding issue primarily, so he's not started on that yet, but it is on his to-do list.
Well, I guess I'm just getting nervous of like the conversation of when contracts could go out and making sure that we have a chance to review that in advance of any contracts going out before this year. So that's my timeline that I'm focused on, I guess. So hopefully that's what we'll be able to meet that timeline.
Yeah, I mean, contracts will go out in August, so I think in 2 months, Josh will get me the language and I will incorporate it into the contracts.
But that's for the payback of an interfund loan.
Correct. Yeah. To secure that payment.
It'd be their percentage of the loan. That seems fair.
Any other general discussion?
Yeah, I've held back all my questions until now.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I got a slight smile.
So how are we on coverage for HOA meetings the 4th of July? You said base camp and then East Meadows you got.
East Meadows said yes.
That's been scheduled for 2 months.
Who with base camp?
John Ryder scheduled it with me. The same with base camp.
Okay. Should we try to get more?
KMA.
We should.
How could we do that?
Not all the HOAs meet that weekend, by the way. I think
that's
so.
true.
It's
I think KMA is meeting July 7th. I think I got a notice of that.
Why not the 9th?
but Meadowstone's meeting July 23rd. for example, so
Oh.
they aren't all meeting on it. It's not like in the old
18th.
18th. Thank you. I sort of read those emails, not terribly well.
Well, any motivation to try to get it, a spot at the KMA?
I think it'd be a good idea. If we can. There's not a conflict of time, but I believe I think it's July. I've got the notice at home. I think it's July 7th is when they're having their meeting.
Makes
Well,
sense.
it'd be nice.
Ellen's on it.
It's nice to have a board member there too.
Yeah, sure.
I always go to the East Meadows one.
I'd be
I'll
happy
be
to-
at the meeting.
Ellen?
Okay.
Hi, I just, since I'm still here, if you would, I mean, I will confirm, but if you would like to come to the meeting, I think that would be great. It is the 7th, and I'm just looking up the time now, and so I'll just put that in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, we would like to be there.
Traditionally, in the old days, we'd have
It was all on the same day. Everybody used to meet here and
Yeah,
conference
I know.
rooms. And I used to be able
it's
to
going to be up in
knock out
Red Cliff.
12 HOAs in the
Yeah,
course
well,
of 6
yeah.
hours. And then
Come here.
It was like
somewhere.
We used to use this one.
a marathon.
Yeah.
It was a marathon of meetings, yeah.
Yeah.
But then COVID changed everybody's meeting
Right.
schedule.
But
So
you could probably communicate with Larry Parker and see if it works into your schedule. If they coincide, it would be good. I really think it's important that we kind of renew the relationship that we used to have with KMA.
Mhm. Okay.
Kind of took a rough turn last year.
Yep, it did. Any other discussion topics? All right, if not, this might be a record.
I think it is.
no,
No,
no.
Certainly.
58 minutes was the record.
When?
Oh, a couple of years ago.
Really?
Yes.
I remember that.
Oh, boy.
Well, in second place.
Or no,
this
I
may-
guessed it was 58 and it ended up being 104 and you won. She said it was going to be over an hour.
Okay,
That's true. So it was 104. It was the shortest we've ever done.
okay. Well, this meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Ellen, I'll just have, when Rick talks to Larry, I'll have him get that information for us.
We can